Hello there, and welcome to Play the Game with Steve. Villains Beyond, Episode 15, Escape the Museum. We're going to take a look at this very unique scenario with an undefeatable villain, which is very, very cool. We're going to take a look at the scenario's mechanics, which are completely different from anything we've seen so far. We're going to take a look at some of the collector's signature cards, which are very few. And then finally, we're going to take a look at some of the modular sets that we can use to enhance the thematics, the difficulty, or just the overall pleasure of this scenario. All this and more on this episode of Villains Beyond, Escape the Museum. Alright, so the collector will be our main villain again, but there's a big difference here. There is no stage numbers. Instead, there is an A version and a B version of the collector. A for standard difficulty and B for expert difficulty. The main differences is obviously the power stats, and we'll take a look, and the hit points. But everything else is the same. So his stats on the standard size are 1 scheme, 1 attack with 8 hit points per player. On his expert side, he is a 2 scheme, 2 attack with 10 hit points per player. And then everything else remains the same. So he is an elder, and then he has a star next to his scheme and attack. And it says the collector gains plus scheme plus attack, where X is equal to the main scheme's stage number. That's very important. And then there is both a forced interrupt. When the collector would be defeated, you will remove 3 threat from this main scheme, and then you will flip this card instead. All right, so here's the big surprise. Boom! The collector gets wounded. That's right. On his standard side, he will be a 0 scheme, 0 attack with infinite hit points. And on his expert side, he will be a 2 scheme, 2 attack with infinite hit points. Everything else remains the same. The collector cannot be defeated. He is an elder and the wounded trait. So, you know, that could be interesting with Rogue coming out. Forced interrupt. When the round ends, you'll flip this card and set the collector's hit point dials to his printed hit points. So 8 per player and then 10 per player. What makes this scenario so special? It is all about the main scheme. All right, so you are trying to escape from the museum, and the first thing you need to do is find the Milano, and which you park somewhere on this huge nowhere. All right, here we go. So set up to put the library labyrinth environment into play. You set aside the ship command modular and counter set. Then you flip to stage 2B. Has a starts at 7 per player, goes up by 1 per player, and has a threshold of 11 per player. There is a force interrupt. When the last threat is removed from this scheme, you advance to stage 2A, and the players win by advancing. But if this stage is completed, so if it gets to 11 per player, the players will lose the game. So you don't want it to go to 11. You want to bring it down to 0. Then you advance to stage 2A, which is Lost in the Museum. And when revealed, you'll put the set aside Milano support from the ship command and counter set into play under the first player's control. So that's nice. It gives you an extra resource. Then Lost in the Museum will start at 11 per player. So that's pretty high. It goes up by 1 per player and has a threshold of 15 per player. Forced interrupt. When the last threat is removed from the scheme, you advance to stage 3A and the players win by advancing. And if this stage is completed again, the players will lose the game. And then finally, it is the Great Escape. When revealed, you will flip the library labyrinth. You'll place 1 acceleration token on the main scheme. You'll shuffle the remaining cards from the set aside ship command and counter set into the encounter deck. So ship command is all about, you know, other spaceships trying to attack you. So it makes sense that you're trying to escape with your ship, and the other ships are coming to get you. All right, so stage 3B, the Great Escape, starts at 8 per player, has a threshold a 1 + 1 per player, and can go up to 12 per player. The first player has an action that you can exhaust the Milano to remove 3 threat from here. And if there are no threat here, the players win the game. And if the stage is completed, the players lose the game. So that is it. So you want to get through all that threat. So if you're playing Justice, you have a very good chance of escaping that museum without too much difficulty. But there is obviously going to be some obstacles in the way. So now let's take a look at the Labyrinth card. All right, let's take a look at that library. It is an environment and a location with a little text that says, this way. It is a hero action that says deal yourself an encounter card, and then you remove 5 threat from the main scheme once per round per player. So you could deal yourselves 4 encounter cards, 1 per each player, and then you can remove up to 20 threat from the main scheme. So that is huge, but you are playing heroic, so obviously more bad stuff is coming. Once you reach the Great Escape on stage 3, the library will turn into the museum ship environment, which is an aerial vehicle with the catchphrase, hold on to your butts. With a force interrupt, when the villain phase begins, you'll choose one. You either exhaust the Milano and assign 2 per player indirect damage amongst players, or assign 3 indirect damage amongst players per player. So that means if you're playing a solo, it's only 3, but if you're playing in a 4-player game, it's 12 damage or 8 damage. So there's things you can do with the Milano. You can either remove 3 threat or take 3 indirect damage. So in solo, it's 1 for 1, you know, but in multiplayer, it makes a big difference. Okay, so, and not only that, but the collector will also be extremely powerful. So that is it for that mechanics. As you can see, he is trying to escape. He is trying to prevent you from escaping. And this is what makes this scenario so much fun. Not only that, but his power also increases tremendously. He becomes a 5/5 villain. That is huge. We don't see any villains that high now. All right, so let's take a look at some of his signature cards. 3 I Have You Nows. And these are treachery cards. When revealed, alter ego, you'll exhaust your identity and the collector will scheme. When revealed in hero form, you are stunned and the collector will attack you. And then as a boost, you'll give collector a tough status card. So you definitely want to see these as boost cards instead of encounter cards. And then finally, his second card, and he's got 3 copies of that one, which is Impossible Geometry. Insight 1, so they'll place 1 threat on the main scheme. When revealed, you are confused. And if you're already confused, you choose and discard a card you control. So this one is brutal, so try not to stay confused too long, because if this comes out, discarding cards that you control can be very, very dangerous. So you can see he's still trying to collect stuff even though you're trying to escape. Couple things to point out here. Cards that interact with the villain's stage number, because normally it's either 1, 2, or 3. Cards like Muster Courage and United We Stand that give an effect equal to the villain's stage number. So cards like this, even if the villain doesn't have a stage number, it is considered to be 1. All right, before we go into what modular sets I would include, I would like to point out that if you're not going to be playing the campaign and you want to modulize this scenario, instead of putting in the galactic artifacts as a required, I technically suggest try the menagerie instead. Like, I really enjoy this modular set. I use it a lot with a lot of different scenarios. The sharks, the ghosts, and the bots. So confuse, patrol, and then quick strike villain. So this is a beautiful set that really, really comes at you with from different angles. So leaving this modular set in this scenario, I think, is a way better idea than just the galactic artifacts. Obviously, if you're doing the campaign, keep the galactic artifacts, you need it, and then switch out some of these for these suggestions. But for this particular video, and before I make my suggestions, I'm going to be playing and suggesting that you keep this one as the regular, obviously with the Milano ship command as well on the side. But the modular sets after that are going to be recommendations based off this being the one that sticks around. All right, so the first one for thematics. Now, again, I really like the collector. I like that you're in his museum. So modular sets that we haven't seen a lot of, and I don't recommend too often. But this one I think feels thematic. It is the Mr. Hyde coming from the Hood scenario pack. Calvin Zebo and Mr. Hyde, they feel like they could be stuck in the collection, and then you have to take him out. And then as you're escaping, you can find these bad boys there running around the museum, and then they try to attack you. I think for me, this is very, very thematic for the collector and this scenario. My second suggestion would be the temporal, just because there's a T-Rex. Again, same logic. Just this, you've caused chaos in his museum, and now there's all these crazy characters that are running around the museum, and then you have to fight your way through them. So obviously the Tyrannosaurus Rex, you got the ancient warriors that come in and stun you, you got the Chitauri soldier, and then you got that time portal here that just keeps coming back. So that for me, again, felt really, really thematic. Again, I've tried these. If you haven't tried them, please give them a shot because they are awesome. And then the final one for thematics, I love Tombstone, but not only is it very thematic, it also has a couple of things that really kind of focus on the collector being a showman, like the media coverage here that you attach your identity. You have to flip to alter ego, which might be a lost condition, so it actually adds up a little bit of difficulty too. The running interference that has a crisis icon, and then the all tied up that you cannot change forms. So for me, I think it's a very cool thematically sound modular set that doesn't add a lot, so you can get to see a lot of the the menagerie in these. But once these start coming out, well, hold on to your horses. So thematically for me, these are the top 3 that I want to include. Now, if I want to increase the difficulty, well, increasing difficulty for this scenario, not too hard. The first one, my first suggestion for increased difficulty is the Mystique modular set. Now, Mystique is going to copy whatever he is. So if she comes out on stage 3, she is going to be a 5/5 minion with 9 health, toughness, and that players cannot attack the villain. So that for me is very good. Obviously, there's the infiltration. So while you infiltrated the museum, she infiltrated your camp. And then obviously the other 2 cards there that go with the Mystique modular set. So that is the first one in terms of difficulty that I would suggest. The other ones are from the Mojo scenario pack, and the first one would be crime. So you have all the ones that have to deal with threat, and you move threat from a side scheme to the main scheme. So that could be very, very dangerous. You got build the case, which says it's a permanent acceleration. You got dial M for Mojo, which says that each other encounter card gains insight 1. It does give you +1 thwart though, which is pretty solid. But the fact that every card has insight 1 could be very, very dangerous. Then you got the side schemes like Law and Order that you get -2 attack, that the villain can't take damage, and that threat cannot be removed from other schemes. So this one is the nasty one to look out for, because that means you can't remove from the main scheme. So very, very tough for this one. So the crime one. And then finally, the other one that I highly recommend is the sitcom for difficulty. All those obligations that force you to go to alter ego and have these really nasty negative effects. Difficulty wise, this is going to be quite a challenge if these obligations keep piling up and you can't afford to go down to alter ego. This is going to be quite a challenge. So for the collector and whatever hero you're pitting up against him, if you are stuck like this. All right, so those are the recommendations for difficulty. Now for the lulls. All right, so I have 4 recommendations for the lulls. The first one, it is the MCM Madness, Marvel Champions Monthly Madness, with our friends from Critical Encounters, the Side Scheme, Marvel Champions Monthly. So Kennedy Hawk, Crimson, Lester Cook and Crow, Addercop, Americano. And then you have the Critical Encounters, Mind Ray, and then the Side Scheme. So these are super fun and unique. They came from the Con of Heroes, but I'm pretty sure if you go on Hall of Heroes for downloadable content, you should be able to find this print and play. Very, very fun. But that is one here. But for reals, the ones I would suggest for the lulls, I really like the Beastie Boys. Again, Mandrill and Griffin, again, kind of fit the theme of like these unique characters that you would see in the collection that are coming for you. You got the Beast Mode that increases damage if you're stunned and confused, and obviously Collector has a few cards that stun and confuse you, and then Double Trouble to add to that stun and confusion lock that the Collector can inflict. So that is my first, second for theme. The other one I enjoy for thematics, it is the Legions of Hell. The reason why it is because there's a couple of crisis icons on those side schemes that can make it pretty punishing, especially if you are stuck against the main scheme. You got the No Place for the Living that makes you discard the highest cost card, upgrade for each player, or then you would take damage. And then you got obviously the Drogners that have guard, and then the Fallen Warriors where you will discard cards from the top of your deck until you discard an ally. So that you can actually maybe get an extra encounter card here if you have no allies in your deck. So this, I think, for lulls was pretty fun. And then finally, my last suggestion for the lulls is the Infinity Gauntlet. That's right, he is an Elder, and he is pissed. Obviously, you're trying to steal the stone because he has one of the stones. But what if he had all of the stones and then he was coming for you, baby? He's coming strong. So that is not only going to really reduce the deck size of the villain, it is also going to add an extra layer of challenge. So he's going to accelerate really fast, and giving the Collector the Infinity Gauntlet is going to be quite a challenge. But I thought it was just for the lulls. It is a good matchup. All right. And it really, really slows down the taking of extra encounter cards. So you really got to think that one through. So those are it for the modular suggestions to try the Escape the Museum. Now let's take a look at some of the best cards that you can add to your deck in each aspect to fight off against this villain. So a couple of suggestions here for aggression. The first one would be the Psylocke ally. She has the ability to confuse, especially if you're playing aggression. Yes, you can beat down the Collector. You can bring him to his wounded side, and then you can confuse him, and then really, really have some fun here, especially if you're playing on the more expert difficulty. So Psylocke is a great ally for that confusion. The other card in aggression I would suggest is Into the Fray. To be able to deal some damage and then kill some minions and then remove from the main scheme, and all by, you know, further advancing your plan. So Into the Fray, obviously a great selection here for aggression. In protection, I highly recommend the Jump Flips. If you're playing with lightning resources in your deck, this will help you defend, prevent all the damage, and prevent up to 2 extra damage, and also remove 2 threat. So this is a very cost-effective card here, preventing 2 damage and removing 2 threat from the main scheme, which is where you want to be in this scenario by removing cards from the main. Very good. The next one is combination. You can actually use bait and switch where the villain attacks you and remove 4 threat. So these are 2 highly good suggestions for the protection aspect. If you're going to be playing Injustice, Sonic Rifle seems like an obvious, no-nonsense card here. Confuse the villain, go down to Alter Ego, you know, do your Justice thing, build fast, and then just crush him. And then finally, in leadership, we have Save the Day. Again, you can discard some allies to remove some threat from a scheme equal to the allies' printed cost. So you can use those allies if you don't need them to block. Then use those allies to remove threat in a big bursty move. So very, very fun. And in basics, none other else than Professor X. That's right, he schemes for 3. He removes 3 threat and confuses the villain. Man, it is the best of both worlds with the Professor. So that's my suggestions. If you're going to be facing off the Collector in Escape the Museum, these are the cards you should be looking at putting into your deck. All right, that about wraps it up for this episode of Villains Beyond. Let me know what you think about these suggestions, if you've tried any of them already, or if there's something that, oh, I might have, you know what, this is also a good suggestion. You should try to take a look at it, please. I always appreciate your feedback. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe to the channel, put those notifications, alerts, thumbs up if you enjoyed, and obviously the comments. Oh, do we love comments? Furthermore, don't forget that once we reach that 2,000 subs, we will have a special tier list video that I've already started filming. So once we reach that, we're only 70 subscribers away from that. So I'm very excited. Hopefully you are too. There's also going to be some prizes and other nice goodies once we reach that mega milestone here of 2K. Yeah, so on that note, keep on playing Marvel Champions, have some fun, and just remember to just play the game. I'll catch you next time. Don't forget to stay alert for the Villains Beyond gameplay collector coming soon to a live stream near you. Bye-bye.